Yes, man. Shaun, good afternoon.
Yeah, back in it, man. Long time, eh?
It's been a while, boy. It's been a while. I mean, I haven't seen you in 6 hours. Literally, it's been six
It's
hours.
just our day together.
It's Wednesday. It's for us, boy. It's for us. But team, for those of you swiping in with us right now, please let us know if you're with us. Say good afternoon and let us know if you are here. Shaun and I have a very interesting topic, something I would say that both of us hold very dearly, and we both um, not think, we both know that this is a very important step and part. It is definitely a foundation in the early stages where we'd like to get this right, but it is hands down probably one of the most vital areas of our exercise regimes. So yeah,
Absolutely. And it's like you say, it's for beginners, it's for advanced. When you are starting, it's important to learn the basics correctly. When you're advanced, you start to get into far more difficult technique-based exercises that obviously require more focus on the technique and the form-based side of things. So for everybody, form is just critical.
Exactly. And team, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into, form, technique, and the importance of that, and also go a little bit deeper into what it actually is and, what it does for the body, the pros and the cons it has on the body, when we are doing it correctly or incorrectly. But in the meantime, just want to say, how's it, Gavin? Hope you're well. And to Annette, so good to see you. Liesel, good afternoon. Visal, good afternoon. Adele, good afternoon. I see a lot of the Cape Town folks swiping in. I hope to see you guys on Saturday at the in-person event. I'm going to share that event on Facebook, on Jeff Together. So check out for that event. There are limited spaces, hence why I am sharing it very late to get it in there. But Shawnee, are you ready to dive into the thick of it, here?
Always, man, always. Like we chatted before, we've got a couple of more topics to talk about, and then we'll break those little topics down into a little bit more detail. But ultimately, to kick us off, the important question, I think the most basic one, is what is the difference between form and technique? And there is an obvious difference between the two. I think they get thrown around a little bit too much that people assume they're the same thing.
Yeah.
But to give an example, basically, when we talk about technique, I'll use an exercise that everybody's familiar with. For an example, a bench press. Laying on your back, pushing the bar straight up, straight down. When we talk about the technique, we can talk about hand positioning closer together to work a little bit more pump, to target a bit more triceps. We talk about wider positioning to target the back a little bit more or the shoulders a bit more. Those different technique changes will tackle a little bit of a different area. However, the form of the movement will always remain the same. The clean, neat lowering down, the contraction of the scapula as well, and then that explosive push up there. So that defines the biggest difference. And it comes down to everything in squats as well. You want to put your feet together. You have sumo squats. We have standard squats. Techniques will change, but the squat action, its form, always remains the same. So that's just a basic explanation of the difference between the two.
Even a more kind of way I think of it is a more basic explanation to that is if you're breaking it down, technique is placement and form is movement. So that's what it is.
Placement. A very long-winded way of saying that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's why we're here. We had to get deeper into it and explain it more in depth. So in that same sentence with, technique, there are so many advantages to the technique, all right? With any exercise, whether that's squatting, bench press, bicep curl, the technique of, for example, on a bench press, using your example now, team, if you're using a bar technique, there are multiple techniques to manipulate the muscle in different ways to stimulate that muscle. For instance, a close grip, a wide grip, whatever the technique is, then obviously comes in the form. So the way that we are moving that force, obviously, is something that we need to pay as perfect attention as to the technique as well. But when we're saying check the form, check the technique, right, is technique being the placement. For example, a push-up. Now talking in Jeff terms, obviously we're not doing any bench presses. Let's look at a push-up. Referencing technique, is your hands positioned in the right position? Are your hands, directly below your chest for a close grip, because then that's going to be more of a tricep activation and a chest activation. If your hands are too wide, right, it's not a problem if it's too wide, but you're shifting the stress and the tension of that work more towards the outer part of the chest, which is, once again, not a bad thing. But these are things that we need to obviously pay attention to, because if we structure a session and we're asking you to, check the technique, hands are directly below the shoulders, hands are directly below the chest, we mean that. We mean that because we want you to be manipulating the muscle and focusing on a smaller sub-muscle that we are after. So, paying attention to technique, first of all, when you're moving through an exercise or attempting that, make sure that you apply that focus before you start the movement. Do your checks, cross check, right hand there, right hand's there. Good. Now let's focus on the movement, which is the form, and let's move.
Spot on there. And it's something we'll cover a little bit later on, is about sort of plateaus or early results type of thing. But there's a reason why we're always asking for different techniques. If we do the same thing in the same fashion all the time, we are going to plateau quickly. It's not going to happen. That's why we encourage technique changes, is to evolve a little bit more, to stress the muscle a little bit more, and obviously to respond and grow a little bit more.
Yeah. And
then
for me, oh, sorry, carry on.
No, I was moving on, so hit it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, on the technique and forms team, obviously for me, the benefits to the correct technique, the benefits to the correct form, obviously is endless. For me, the first thing I always remember and go back to is, when you start right, learn the right way. When you're cutting, short on the form, which is your movement, you are going to fall short of maximizing on a certain exercise, which is going to
stop you. You're jumping ahead here.
Oh, sorry, am I?
That was the third point I had to bring in. So let me just cover number 2 quickly, which is a short one.
Cool. Sorry.
Basically, what everybody's going to hear quite a lot of in this industry is a word we throw around, or two in particular, that are called either physiology or biomechanics. There's the brief explanation I wanted to just give was what biomechanics are. In the title, as it says, the bio will refer to the body, the mechanics will refer to the science of the movement. So all exercises, as crazy as they seem, even something like burpees, you think we create them to just make you sore. Everything is designed mechanically to suit and facilitate the correct type of muscle movement and development. So we use things biomechanically to improve. That's why the form and technique is so important as well.
Mm-hmm. On that. Oh, sorry, you're still going. Sorry, you're cutting out.
No, that was that. I just wanted to break that one quickly and then move into why it's important to create those correct movement patterns, as you were speaking about.
On the biomechanics, I just want to add on to that. I think, and that's a great start leading into form. So in less technical terms, what is biomechanics? Biomechanics is the way in how the body operates and how the body is moving, right? So if we're referencing now to exercise, we've got three muscle actions. We've got a concentric, eccentric, and isometric, right? Those are the 3 muscle actions we use and manipulate to exercise. So concentric movement is a movement when you are shortening a muscle head. For bicep example, is a bicep curl, you're shortening. That's the concentric movement, is the upward movement. On the flexion, right? On the flexion. Sorry, I nearly lost my term there.
Going back to studio as well, I'm thinking of
so on the extension, that is a concentric movement. It's terms you don't need to know, but obviously it's nice to explain this to you. So eccentric movement is the downward movement when you're lengthening that muscle, right? Now, this is the point I'm getting to. Form has a big role to play in the biomechanics of the body. On a concentric movement, correct form is all the way up, all the way down, full extension. Now, if you're not applying the correct form and you're stopping here on the upward movement and you stop there with a slight little flexion and not utilizing the full extension, you are not utilizing the full muscle head, whether that's a bicep curl, whether that's a squat, whether that's a bench press, irrespective of what exercise it is. If you're not utilizing the full range, all right, you're falling a little bit short. Now, I do understand there are there are people that struggle strength-wise. We're not all on the same level. We can't get to the full range. That is perfectly fine. It doesn't mean that you're still not stimulating that muscle. It doesn't mean that you're still not benefiting from that exercise. But that's where, the technique then starts to play a very big role. Make sure that your technique, you're positioning your feet, your body posture is in the correct posture, and you regress the load. If there's any resistance like dumbbells, whatever, get rid of that, regress the exercise, and master that before you kind of advance it to anything by adding resistance or, increasing the push-up or the squat or whatsoever.
No ego lifting, as we call it in the industry.
No.
But it absolutely comes down to that. It's that when we talk about creating correct movement habits, we talk about the entire movement from 0 to 100. Some people will struggle with push-ups a lot because the strength development isn't in the chest. They can't get all the way down to the ground and then fire back up. That's because you've been doing halfies. You've developed the strength only at that peak of the movement and not throughout the entire movement. So that's why we always want to focus on scaling back if you must. You'll hear a lot of us talk about rather do 5 in a minute, clean and perfect, than do 45 that are half, because you're not going to get the benefit out of that we want from the full range of motion, the full movement pattern. It's ultimately what these exercises are designed for, and that's how they improve us.
Yeah. And we've now touched on 2 actions of the biomechanics, which I mentioned to you, and I'll say again, is the concentric and the eccentric. Eccentric down, concentric up. The third one is an isometric. Now, isometric is known more for injury rehab kind of exercises. Now, I've seen this is your next topic, Shaun, so I'm just prompting that early.
Love it.
But the way I want to explain this to you is what do you call it? What was I saying? Concentric, eccentric, and isometric. So isometric would be your longer holds. Now, a lot of bios and do that rehab exercises, focusing on a lot of more isometric hold exercises. Now, that is not an exercise that is going to make you strong. It is an exercise that can be used to develop strength, right? Starting from a rehab injury perspective, doing more of planking or neck extensions and flexions, those kind of things, is stuff that rehab people would use. You would see us at Jeff use isometric movements, but how we structure that into a session, obviously we're putting a lot more load onto that muscle prior to that isometric hold, which then sort of kind of tweaks a little bit of the set, and it does bring a strength element to it. So for example, making you do 20 squat jumps or 40-second squat jumps into a squat pulse for 30 seconds and then a squat hold. So what I've done is I've exhausted, I've fatigued, I've put tension to your quads by making you do those 2 exercises, which is more of a plyometric squat jump, explosive, squat pulse, more your concentric, eccentric movement, and then into a isometric squat hold, which then we manipulate that exercise to bring in more of a strength element, because that muscle is now under great fatigue. It's very tired, and all of a sudden we're putting this load on that muscle, and it's just holding. Yeah. I am at a loss here. I'm also lost. And why are you lost? I don't understand.
Yeah, and then also on the converse of that, when we talk about injury recovery and rehab, we've got injury prevention as well, and that's why it's so important to focus on the correct form and the technique. If you're doing half exercises, like you referenced the bicep curl, if we're just doing that sort of 45 up and just going a halfway down, what we're doing is we're limiting the range of motion, we're creating tension in the muscle, we are taking away flexibility as well. So we create now a higher level of risk into creating micro tears or even proper tears of the muscle. And that then is something to avoid when we look at doing the full range of motion, creating strength at both the insertion and origin of the muscle, so that throughout its entirety, there are no weak points, because we all know chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The same needs to be thought about the way muscles sort of intertwine and work together as well.
Totally agree. And for those of you guys that don't know, maybe I'm going a little bit off topic, but how it works, if you were interested, I'm just saying it anyway. building a muscle, right? Whether you're building lean muscle, exposing lean muscle, or just building muscle mass, when you exercise and you're performing a certain movement, for example, again, a bicep curl, what happens is we create micro tears within the muscle fibers, right? So basically looking at this is your muscle head. When you exercise, you're stretching that muscle. You're stretching that muscle. It's not a bad thing, right? It's just termed as a micro tear. In that muscle head, you start getting slight little micro tears, which means that muscle head expands. Now, if you're not eating correctly and your nutrition is not up to scratch, after a certain time, that muscle head starts to go back and grow to the original form, right? So obviously making sure that nutrition is on point to maintain and get great results is vitally important.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's how we move into that topic of earlier that I just alluded to a little bit, was the early plateau or potentially not getting results. We'll have people that are just throwing themselves through sessions, burning calories by the hundreds, but aren't seeing the type of muscular or strength developments that typically come with some other people who are posting about them. So what happens there is, again, as I just mentioned, there is the shortening of the muscles, doing half reps. If we are not getting through that full range of motion, we are not utilizing the muscle in its correct fashion, and you're not going to, as a result, develop those little micro tears to come back a little bit stronger. They'll be focal in only an area of the muscle. So for the bicep, again, that example, if we're only doing little halfies there, we're only going to develop that strength for that little range of motion, which will give me a small little pump. But I'll be weak at the flex, the fully extended aspect, and then I'll be weak at the top, often struggling to just finish the rep because I haven't completed them before. So it can induce an early plateau, or what we can call no results, for a far simpler definition. But it's because that we just aren't committing to the full ranges of motion. We aren't committing to the correct form. And that's ultimately what leads us to not getting the correct results.
Which means you will be strongest in this position. So you're going to be carrying your shopping bags like this in a half flex extension.
Don't get them up to the counter.
No, but it's very true what you say, and on that, you know, and another thing that leads into that for me is recovery, you know, and it ties in very, very well with what you said now. Is, you know, hitting a plateau is one, yes, we're not developing the muscle properly. Why are we not developing muscle properly? We are not exploring our range. We're not doing enough mobility by, you know, going into a deeper range. So like I said earlier, regress is the first option. Master that, get it right, then move on. All right. The second reason why I'm adding and saying that stretching and recovering is part of a plateau, because what we do is we train, we have one rest day, we train. All right. So we overload that muscle. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of lactic acid within that muscle. So that muscle is going to be very tight. So which means when we are tight, there's a restrict of movement. So you might think, or you might feel that I'm utilizing a full range here, or I'm doing perfectly fine, which you are, but you're not actually fully developing that muscle. You're not actually utilizing that muscle 100% because you are under a lot of tension. There's a lot of stress on that muscle. So if you are someone that strictly kind of focuses on recovery, stretching, you are putting yourself in a position to be more active, to be, what is the word I'm looking for? You're putting yourself in a better position to, you know, perform better every session, because you're spending time to recover, to allow the muscle to relax and use it to its full potential. So that is also, for me, you know, another reason why people experience plateaus is because we are not focusing on recovery. And I say this a lot, and I'm very guilty of that. And I know there's a lot of us that are very guilty of that. I stretch. I don't stretch enough. Let's put it that way. But you know, it's definitely a thing that we need to be more strict on ourselves with, because it is definitely part of the journey.
Absolutely. There's a silly little chat I always used to use back in the days. If we just take an elastic band and you chuck it in the freezer, Leave it there. That'll be the perfect representation of the tension, the stiffness. Yes, you can pull that apart. You'll still get a little bit of elasticity, but it's not going to go too far, or else if you pull it, it's going to snap. If you leave that on the countertop, let it get some rest, let it return to room temp, you'll get far more flexibility out of it. You'll be able to stretch everything across the room and it won't snap. So ultimately, that puts into the perspective of how beneficial rest can be to just help wrap the mind around it.
Put it in the sun. Put it in the sun. Warm it up. Warm it up. Make that thing stretchy.
I'm just blaming the white off the walls. It's making me look like that.
Oh, man.
And I've lost where we were.
We were just chatting about early plateaus.
Yeah, and then leading into how better form can actually make exercises easier. If we think about sometimes how we cop out when we get tired and we lose technique a little bit, what happens is when we shift that technique, we often incorporate other muscles. When we talk about doing a push-up with a wide grip, focusing on a little bit of extra shoulder and back work, or close grip, utilizing a little bit of extra triceps. When you're incorporating those extra muscles, you are burning extra energy. You're working harder. We're not getting that full development of the muscle we're supposed to be. So you're putting in mountains of effort for a very small result. So focusing on that correct form and developing it properly will utilize only the muscles targeted in the exercise. And obviously, as a result, use far less energy.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think I say this a lot in my lives. And you know, a lot of you probably have heard me say this a lot. When I say, bring your mind to muscle attention, mind to muscle focus. So, and it's exactly what Shaun said now in explaining it better. So is you know, focusing on the muscle you are busy working. All right. So for argument's sake, once again, push up. Are you flexing your elbows? All right, which now is putting a lot of tension on the shoulder and the joint. Right. So the surrounding muscles on the shoulder and the joint, which means it's taking away work from the chest. So that's where proper form for me is vitally important, because if I'm asking you to do push-ups, chest presses, whatever you call it, I'm focusing on the chest. All right. So if the form is incorrect, we are compensating. Now, what happens when we compensate is that we compensate not only because of ill form, but also because of stiffness. All right. And when that starts to come in, we start exposing ourselves to injury, because your intention is not to activate this muscle and work this muscle. And we're putting this muscle and this joint in a very awkward position and putting a lot of resistance on that movement. We then start to create, unbalanced muscle strength, unbalanced posture, all those kind of things start to come in. And that's when you go knocking on a bio's door saying, listen, ek is gebreke, I am struggling here. And it's not a bad thing, but, you know, fixing that early could prevent a lot of injury, could prevent a lot of, you know, sad times where you just feeling like, I need to go get this sorted or I can't exercise.
That's it. Prevention is better than cure, always.
Exactly.
And I love the way you brought up the fatigue aspect of it. If you want, just set up your phone and record yourself doing an exercise, scroll through to the back end of it. When you are tired, you sacrifice your form. It's gone. You just want to get through the movements. We're not thinking anymore. You're just thinking about time left. That's obviously then what creates the detriment and the higher risk of injury, because you have given up on the form. I do it a lot in my classes. You'll see I reset, I stop what I'm doing. I stand up. If I'm doing burpees, I'll lock everything out again, get my natural posture, take a deep breath, and then go again. So it's not about just doing 1,000 reps in those 45 seconds, but more along the lines of what we can complete effectively and through pure form.
It's so true. I think for me, sorry, I was freezing there for a second because you were frozen. I don't know whether you were still talking. Team, like I said, in the beginning of this chat, and please, if you guys do have any questions relating to form, technique, anything you are struggling or experiencing, put in the questions, put in the comments there for us. Shaun and I, we're here to answer that for you. And if we end this live, we will come back and still answer those questions for you. But what I was going to say is... my brain is fraught. I don't know what I was going to say. What are you saying again? I did the same thing this morning, bro. The same thing. What are you
well,
saying again?
as well as if you do have any questions, we have attached as well, the pinned comment here is the course Fix Your Form, the basics. So to encourage everybody to get through that course, to have a look at some simple exercises done in the fashion that you meant to. As I did yesterday, we'll also be delving into a few requested exercise movements every Tuesday so that we can address those. They'll be live as well, so people can comment and let us know about any issues that they have. But we want people to engage a little bit more. I've started to see a little bit more of people complaining, not about injury specifically, but more about niggles. And through a little bit of a chat, it often breaks down to them being slightly out of technique or just a little bit off form. And that's something that we really, really want to start addressing a little bit more publicly, and then as well as privately. When guys reach out to us, say, I'm struggling with squats, we are here. There's so many of you are part of the club program as it is. Reach out to your coaches, make them do some extra work. Let's delve into all of these little issues. Let's just make everybody as comfortable and as strong as possible.
Yeah. What I was going to say was actually, I was just going to reiterate what I've mentioned in the beginning of this, Ed. There is absolutely nothing more important to me in exercise than form and technique. Hands down. I don't care how tired you are, how pumped, how stiff you are. You need to focus at that, and that's that. And if you struggle, that's why we're here. You've got a club coach, you've got the instructors. We are very easy approachable. So reach out to us. We're here to assist you. But I want you guys to make reference of that form course. Go and look at that form course that was filmed by Ed, by Dom. And it's the basics form course, taking us through basic movements. Basic movements is basically just one movement, all right? There's another course out there, but I want you guys to focus on the basic movements first, because in 3 weeks' time, we're going to come back here and we're going to sit down and we're going to chat about the form and technique of more compounded movements, all right? More complex movements. So things that are involving a double movement. But for now, I honestly advise every single person to go and do this form course. And next time when you do a session, I want you to take that advice. Focus on technique. Focus on the body movement, which is your form, right? And once you start to, neglect form and technique, stop, take a quick breather and back into it. Or stop, regress the exercise and back into it. Or stop, reduce the load, drop the weights and back into it. I promise you, like Shaun said earlier, doing 10 proper reps is better than doing a minute of half reps, because I'm going to develop myself. I'm going to get stronger because I'm more focused on completing full ranges, all right? Utilizing a full range is going to give me more mobility, right?
Yeah, I just want to touch on the last little point that we had, which was about the topic of breathing as well, and the efficiency that's created when we have form. Because we've spoken now on the biomechanics and how the exercises are designed around particular movements of the body, what you can then develop is a proper breathing habit around them. So for an example, the squat, we breathe on the way down. As we explode, we exert that breath. So when we compromise these movements, and like for a burpee, for example, if you're just struggling to get through them, you're throwing yourself to the floor, you're rolling back up, you got no control, and there's no staggered phase of movement in that exercise, you're not going to have those points of reference to control your breathing through. So we've got to consider that movements are always staggered. If a push-up's going to be 1, 2, not just a movement through. And those staggered points, those break points, are ultimately what can also lead to us controlling better breathing, getting better efficiency. And oxygen is fuel for the muscles when it works out. The better you can breathe, the more you can get in, the more effort you can put in long term, and the better your recovery as well will be.
And team, try this. Why are we asking you to breathe easier or more efficiently? Hold your breath for a minute and do squats for a minute and see what that feels, or feel what it feels like, right? All you're doing is you cutting oxygen to the brain, you're cutting oxygen and blood flow to the muscles, all right? So in order for your muscle to get an effective stimulation and really kind of develop better, we need blood flow through the muscle, because if we don't have blood flow coming through that muscle, it's gonna turn out to be a dry prune. Okay, so my focus when I breathe is always rhythm. I focus on a beat. So whether I'm doing star jumps, all right, I get the movement going first. Okay, there's my rhythm. All right. Working on a rhythm, same as the squats, like he mentioned now, whether it's an explosive jump squats or statics, just normal static squatting. You inhale on the downward movement with any exercise, whether you're bench pressing, you bicep curling, your inhale is on the easy part of the exercise. So in this case, on a bench press, the eccentric downward movement, you inhale, exerting the power, exhale. Bicep curl, eccentric, exhale. Anything, squat, you're going down, eccentric, exert power, exhale. That's how you do it.
Yes.
Allow the oxygen to flow.
Remember it in your head as a double E. It's exhale on exertion. That's it. So where you are putting the effort in, that is where you must be exhaling. And that's why you hear me shout a lot in classes as well, because it's easier to get the air out faster that way. So it's always on that effort, that explosive little bit of the movement, the more power-based side of things.
It is indeed.
I mean, that's pretty much that, man.
Yeah, so just to recap, let's just sum it up as a team here quickly, team. So we're focusing to technique and form. Why it's important. We've explained to you why it's important. But going forward now, I want you guys to focus. Firstly, before you start any movement, check the technique. Is your hands positioned the right way? Is your knees aligned? Are your shoulders, nice and strong, chest nice and proud? Irrespective of what you're doing, make sure that you're doing those checks, all right? If you don't know what those checks are, I encourage you to put it in the comments for the instructor to cue those checks for you. All right. I will do my best to cue you guys. And if I don't, please call me out on it so I can give you the cues on those certain exercises. Right. So check your cues. Make sure the movement of the body is the form obviously is correct, and focusing on the breathing. And then do not forget about the recovery. We say that's a vital part of this journey. So stretching, allowing the body to be in a position to function a lot better. And other than that, we'll see you guys when you get lekker groter. And you should.
That's why I sit like this. So yes, I'm feeling big.
It's the camera. We got a narrow lens cam, so it makes me look bigger. Quite enjoy that.
It's all lights and shadows and angles.
Oh, joking.
But no,
love
listen,
guys.
Everybody
So
for joining.
important.
Great
Thanks,
to see
guys.
this feedback as well. So many comments about everybody saying, "Oh, that's me. Oh, I'm guilty of that. Oh, I've done that." It's great to see that what we speak about, it lands and resonates with people. So you know what to look for and what to identify and change.
Exactly. This is all about just building a better relationship. It's the same with nutrition. We say nutrition is so hard. I mentioned this on Sunday. Like, it's probably the hardest part about your fitness journey. That's true. But let's go ask the people that have taken time to self-educate themselves on nutrition. They probably have a better journey on the nutrition side of it because they understand more, right? So take it in, write these things down, understand it, because I promise you it's going to help you in the exercise department. And when it comes to the nutrition part, right, when we're sitting doing these eds or we have these courses and materials available, study from it, learn from it. Whether you're going to an external source, make sure it's a reliable source, but learn as much as you can, because that way you build a better relationship. And when there's a better relationship, there's a better understanding. And when there's a better understanding, it's a lot easier to maintain. It's a lot easier to adjust and to keep it interesting. It's a lot like meeting a friend. I'm going to walk past Shaun in the street and just be like, "What's up?"
And just swoon.
And that's it.
Tim.
Yeah. But if I get to know him a little bit better and I understand who he is as a person, I'll maybe stop and have a conversation with him and we'll have a beer together. So there'll be a better relationship. And that same applies to whatever you do in life. Right.
Spot
Team,
on. Happy words to leave us with.
Thank you, Shaun. Thanks for your time. And we'll be back, team. Like we said, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. Shaun and I will come back. We'll answer those questions for you. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Love this, guys. So important. And I'm glad you guys enjoy this. And I hope that you could have taken something from the session. But once again, get onto that form course with Dom, the basics form course, and go in just educate yourself on the proper form and technique.
Absolutely.
Shaun, you want to close us off here, boy?
Goodbye. Thanks everybody for joining. As Louis says, get stuck in, educate yourself. You can never have too much education. And then hopefully we'll see you all soon at the next one.
Hands down, team. Have a fabulous one. I'll see you at 6 a.m. for the box fit tomorrow morning. Don't be shy. Don't be late. It's going to be a vibe. Have a beautiful afternoon. Look after yourselves, team, and we'll see ya.
Cheers.